All right, well, it's a minute past the top of the hour, and we want to honor our time here, so we will go ahead and begin. So welcome this morning. Thank you for joining us once again for another Presence on Zoom. And this time, it's not a post-conference webinar, but it kind of is, because we are getting to hear from the award recipients, the people who received awards at the annual conference. But when we give those awards out, they don't know they're getting them. So there's not really an opportunity to share more about their projects until now. So we get to spend some time with the award recipients. And we gave this a fancy title, Creating a Path for Excellence and Inspiration, which is really what this is doing. So I hope you appreciate all the fantastic work. And really, these are some of my favorite people in CWR. I'm looking forward to hearing from them. So my name is Robert Cogswell, as I'm sure you know by now with all these introductions to webinars. I'm the Director of Communications for the Sisters of St. Joseph of Orange and a member of CWR's Education Committee. So as you can see, we're viewing panelists. We're not seeing all the attendees and participants like we would in a flash conversation. We do encourage you to ask questions, and you can use the chat and the Q&A features to do that. And if there are any unanswered questions, you can always follow up with our panelists via email. We'll take a little pause between each award recipient for each category if you want to direct questions specifically to them, but we'll also follow up with questions at the end. This session is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on CWR's website. So if you need to just pause for a moment, answer an email or respond to a phone call or something, you can easily do that. And you can come back and recapture what was said later if you'd like to do that. So before we get into introducing the panelists today, I do want to acknowledge that there were quite a few submissions. We had over 20 submissions across the different categories. So thank you for doing that. We want to recognize everybody, and there's a lot of great work happening through CWR, not just with these outstanding achievements that we're looking at today. So thank you for doing that, and look ahead in 2022 because we will continue to award the great work that you're doing. So keep up the good work out there. So without further ado, we'll get into our panelists. We are recognizing today outstanding achievement in print media, outstanding achievement in electronic media, and outstanding integrated campaign. So first up to bat, we're welcoming my friends from the Sisters of St. Joseph of Baden, Pennsylvania. The creative team there, Barbara Hecht, Alison Lucci, and Erin Ninehouser. And they received outstanding achievement in print media. So take it away. Oh, you're muted, Barb.
Thank you, Rob. Our magazine is published twice a year. It's mailed to approximately 800 friends and donors, and it typically runs 28 or 32 pages. The title, Dear Neighbor, echoes the Sisters of St. Joseph mission to serve God and every dear neighbor without distinction. One of the criteria that we use in selecting a cover photo for a magazine is that it includes a sister or sister with our dear neighbors. I don't think you can see Sister Sarah on the screen, but she's on the far right in the yellow, and she's with a group of our neighbors in a unity march. The messages in this magazine are particularly relevant because it was published just months after the killing of George Floyd, and it was also the midpoint of the congregation's implementation of its 5-year chapter goals, which focused on the anti-racism initiatives, which are on the next slide here. So as you can see, they're all related to anti-racism, education, engaging others, and working to dismantle structures of privilege. These commitments really formed the foundation for the goals of the magazine, which were threefold. The first goal was to illustrate ways through stories and photos of how our sisters are implementing these chapter commitments. The second goal was to really remind our loyal friends and new readers of the sisters' long history in serving in Black communities and advocating for racial justice. And thirdly, we always like to try to engage our readers in sharing our mission with us with the call to action. Now, Erin is going to show some examples of how these goals were reached.
Thank you, Barb. And what we're looking at here is a story that focuses on the experiences of our sisters working together with people in the community, responding to just the events of 2020, in particular, the murder of George Floyd. And so this was a gathering that the sisters attended in Aliquippa, just a few miles from the Mother House, and in the neighborhood of several of our sisters who live right down the street from where this demonstration was held. And so we're telling this story really focusing on voices in the community and how our Black neighbors were experiencing this time, and the relationships that they formed with our sisters, and how everybody worked together, you know, to have difficult conversations, but for the purpose of love and unity. So we can go to the next slide. This was photos that you see here is a demonstration at the Mother House where sisters made their own signs and came out to participate in something called Unity Week in Beaver County that was organized by Minister Sean Owens and a group called Undivided in Christ, which is an interdenominational movement that many of our sisters participate with. And that march from the cover photo was one of the activities during this Unity Week, and this was something done here at the Mother House. And so, you know, we wanted to really focus on this story not as, you know, as a cohesive picture of how working toward greater unity is at the heart of our sisters' spirituality and mission, and how working on racial justice issues has been part of the congregation's mission for many, many years. And so we focused on the history and our sisters' work in the 1950s and 60s and 70s in Pennsylvania, but also in Atlanta and different communities where sisters were serving. And, you know, sort of tying that in, you know, bringing that story up to the present and sharing a history that a lot of people might not have known about. So we also invited sisters to share their own perspectives in terms of a call to action and a call to greater awareness, and how to cultivate that spirit of openness in ourselves, to examine our biases and to not run away from that discomfort, but to embrace it, and, you know, for the purpose of healing and unity. And we also, something that was very important to us, as I said, was including the voices of our Black and brown neighbors in Beaver County. And so we focused on including their perspectives and how not only they're working with the sisters, but just, you know, their experiences in a majority white county and living through this time that we were living in. And so one of the efforts we profiled was the Unity Choir. And efforts there. So there's a lot of content in this magazine, and just sort of made me emotional just to go back and reconnect and reread these stories. And so Barb's going to talk a little bit about the challenges that our sisters face in talking about a sin of racism within the congregation many years ago.
Barb, you're muted.
So sorry. As Erin mentioned, the challenge of here's a white communication staff with white sisters trying to tell the story or our experiences of our neighbors of color. But the major challenge in planning this was that our own congregation, like many other congregations, denied membership to African Americans. And in 1960, we denied membership to a woman named Patty Gray. And this story was really kind of hidden in our history because there was no record when women were denied entrance. So it wasn't until a few years ago that one of our sisters attended a national conference or international conference called None in the World Conference in London. And she was listening to Shannon D. Williams, who you may know is the author of a book on Black Catholic nuns in the US. And she told the story that our congregation did not know. So now the story has been revealed, and this revelation really spurred a really earnest effort on the part of our leadership to try and seek out Dr. Gray and seek forgiveness and reconciliation through a series of letters and phone calls over months. It turned out eventually that Dr. Gray is now a friend of our community. So why was this story important to tell? If we could just go back to the next slide, the previous slide. Sister Mary Pellegrino really said it quite eloquently, that we believe that it's important that we be honest, that we tell and own this sin and others like it in our history in the same way that we tell and own our own stories of grace. So while this communication was being told internally to our sisters, it was not told yet to our external audiences. So really, how could we communicate these anti-racism messages in our magazine without acknowledging our own complicity in the racism? This was really a critical element to the overall really theme of the issue, and our current leadership agreed. So who tells the story? It seems like Dr. Gray would be the person to tell the story because she was so directly impacted by the congregation's decision. So we offered her an opportunity to write it from her perspective, and she graciously declined, and that was fine. So then we asked Sister Sally Witt, who's an historian and author, and who happened to be the sister who was at the conference in London, to tell the story. And so she wrote about the whole process of the revelation and the reconciliation. And then we did, as a courtesy, ask Dr. Gray to review Sister Sally's account, and she gave it her blessing. But this, we thought, was really kind of the anchor of everything that came from the magazine, because if this story wasn't there, then everything else just would not have the same kind of meaning. And now we're going to turn it over to Alison.
Thanks, Barb. Obviously, there were two monumental things going on in our country. This issue was clearly focused on racism, but we felt like we couldn't ignore that there is still a pandemic going on in our country at this time. So Barb was able to interview, luckily there's a sister in the congregation who has a nursing and bioethics background, and this story really talked about how it put the pandemic in the context of how it is disproportionately affecting communities of color because of systemic health and social inequalities. And because there were so many important stories in here, but they were all certainly heavy topics, important messages, but we didn't want to leave people without a little bit of hope. So this is actually the back cover of the magazine, where we talked about some outreach that our sisters at the Mother House did, writing thank yous and sending them to all different kinds of essential workers. And we had also heard from a lot of people that they were missing, obviously, the sisters, and they were missing the Mother House and the grounds. And so we debuted a professionally done drone video of our property, which I think I shared the link to that in the chat if anybody wants to see it. We were really happy with the video, and the videographer was wonderful. Some feedback that we got on the magazine, obviously, there was lots of positive commentary. There were a few negative comments. there were maybe 2 or 3 people that specifically unsubscribed from our mailing list and mentioned the magazine content as the reason that they didn't agree with it. But I would say there was more positive response than negative. We actually had to do, I think, a small rerun of some more magazines because they were being requested by different community groups. So that was a happy thing. And even the negative commentary, we didn't just leave it at that. The goal to really engage with people was an important one. So we didn't just let the conversation end. We reached out to each person via email who had sent us, some feedback that they didn't particularly like this magazine or the content within it, and invited them to talk with our Peace and Justice coordinator. None of them took us up on it, but the offer was still there. And I'm sure many of you know how much work goes into creating a magazine and all the stories and all the content within it. So we tend to use them in a variety of places. We put all the work into creating the stories, and we use them across a variety of other channels like our website, our social media, our electronic newsletter. So these are just some examples of how we waited until actually recently it was Black Catholic History Month to share that story about Patricia Gray. These are some statements whenever the George Floyd verdict came out. And also some more invitations. Our Spirituality Center did a virtual book club on this book. And then this is actually just a screenshot of our November e-newsletter and using some of those messages from our magazine in that way. And we just try to frame the messages in a way that's educational and not divisive. And I think these are 2 just links that I sent in the chat. So I will put it back in case Erin or Barb want to throw anything else in there that I might have missed.
Thank you to my staff. I have a great staff.
Okay, are there any questions for our friends from the Sisters of St. Joseph of Baden about Dear Neighbor magazine? You can throw something up in the chat. The chat is really active. Brian's great about dropping in links in there. So if you've maybe had an opportunity to open those up and see for yourself as we're underway here. One question I have for you all on your team in coming up with themes for an issue like this. Obviously, in this case, there were a lot of other people involved in terms of like leadership and other community members. Do you have like an editorial team or board or some sort of group that you collaborate with that kind of creates that, or are you on your own?
Well, generally, my first point of contact is the leadership team. And I meet with them quarterly, the 4 of them, and I usually come in with some ideas. I get feedback from them, and then I connect with whatever department heads or whatever sisters I need to.
All right, we've got a couple from our own panelists, so they're already engaged in what you're saying before they do their own presentation. Belinda's asking about your mailing list. So you have 800 that are mailed. How many might receive them as like a newsletter?
I think we have 8,000.
8,000.
Yeah.
That's a difference maker. Yes.
Yeah. I want to defer to Alison, but I think we have 4,000 to 5,000 on our news.
It's between 3 and 4 right now. Get our electronic media. Yeah.
Okay, so, and maybe that Kim asks a similar question. So sharing a print magazine online is tricky. How do you share it on the web?
We were using Issue. I'm sure some of you are familiar with it. Right now, we still put it on Issue, but actually we have much more success and much more traffic when we actually pull the stories and the photos out and make them stories on our website and drive people there from the social media and from our email.
Okay, and there's a compliment from Michelle, says that your magazine is beautifully designed. Do you design it in-house?
No, Michelle, we do not. We have a wonderful designer who really understands the sisters and really portrays it in a very kind of open and flowing way. And I've been working with her for a number of years. And usually if I have a vision, she takes it up about 20 notches. So she's very good. If anybody wants her name, let me know, and I'll be happy to put you in touch with her.
All right. Any other questions out there? Okay, well, we will still have another opportunity. If something, if you get a lightning bolt during another panelist presentation about this first one, we can still certainly come back to that before we say farewell today. So, all right, thank you very much, Barb and Alison and Erin. Thank you so much. And we're going to transition now over to Jennifer Kaminski, who is a communications specialist and graphic designer for the Ursuline Sisters of Mount St. Joseph in Maple Mount, Kentucky.
Hi, everybody. Let me share my screen here. Okay, get that up. We are located 2 hours west of Bernie in Louisville and an hour south of Evansville. And our sisters served as educators. They've been here since 1874. So that's just a little bit of background about our community. And I've been in this position 16 years. And we started out when I started working here with 200 Ursuline sisters, and now we have a little under 100 sisters. And the reason I bring that up is because we're going to be talking about Facebook, and we do have over almost 5,000 Facebook followers. So I thought that was a good number to share with you. So what this campaign is about for the Electronic Media Award was a Facebook campaign. And we do focus on Facebook. We have Twitter, we have Instagram, and we use YouTube. But Facebook has been our focus because of our audience being the largest. And we do get a lot more feedback and response. A majority of our Facebook audience is women, and I think about half are age 55 and older, which may be similar to your audience also. We do post every day, and it can be a challenge to create that content, as you know, and get your mission across. We have regular things that we post weekly with hashtags, and you can see some of them here. But what we did our campaign on, and what we're going to talk about today, is how we highlighted special liturgical times within the Catholic Church. So I'm going to go back to 2019. This wasn't officially part of our campaign for the award, but this tells you how we got started. We wanted to recognize Advent, as most of our communities do, and we wanted to do something unique to our community instead of just something generic. So we asked our sisters to write or submit to us a favorite poem or scripture or verse that had to do with Advent that they enjoyed reflecting on for Advent. And we share these on Facebook. We use this clip art. And so every Sunday of Advent, we shared something that the sisters had sent to us. And a few of them wrote poems, original poems that we shared. So this was a much more personalized approach to celebrating Advent. So when the following Lent, I had asked our sister to submit something similar for the Lenten season. And this time I created a graphic to go with our campaign, with our logo. And this helps tie the posts together as a series because they're not used on consecutive days. So when Advent and Christmas came around again, I thought it might be fun to ask the sisters to send us a Christmas memory from their childhood or community life. And we got so many interesting memories of, I wrote a few of these down, visiting grandparents, getting candy and toys such as dolls, roller skates, trains, dressing up as angels. And of course, no one overlooked the sacred Christmas Mass. And one sister even recalled the novices were not allowed to receive mail during Advent, so they got all their mail in a big pile on Christmas Day, which I thought was interesting. So this is the graphic we use for Christmas memories. So the campaign we focused on for the actual award entry was for this year's Lent. And we asked our sisters to tell us about their favorite cross or crucifix and to submit a photo if possible. And if not, we took the photo for them. And we decided we needed a more kind of a tagline, I guess, to go with this so that people would understand what it was we were sharing. So one of the things we considered was the crosses they carry, but we had a sister who chose the really huge crucifix that's in our chapel. So we decided, okay, we'll do crosses close to our hearts as our slogan. So I'm going to show you a few examples of the series. So Sister Elaine submitted a picture of a cross from a rosary that belonged to her late aunt, who was also an Ursuline sister. So we used pictures of both sisters and the cross in our campaign graphic. Okay, this is Sister Michael Marie, and she sent us a picture of her parents' rosaries. She said the rosary was, the devotion to the rosary was a big part of her childhood. And she talked about that and how this was one of her most treasured possessions. So our next post, well, we had several, but I'm just sharing a few. Sister Cheryl said she brought this simple wooden cross with her to the novitiate, and there wasn't a wall to hang it on, so she put it on her bed pillow, and she said she's kept it with her ever since, everywhere she's ever moved. And it reminds her that Jesus has risen, but there are also times that she would be on the cross. Okay, this is Sister Rebecca's post that she wanted to share. Her favorite cross was the crucifix. This hangs in a church near Assisi, Italy, where St. Francis saw his vision to rebuild the church. And we actually have a replica of that in our villa, and we took a picture of that and put it with her post. If this last example, this is Sister Marietta, who chose the crucifix in the chapel as her favorite cross. So we shared that. And she is also the sister who, fortunately, she writes a monthly reflection for us to share on social media every month, and which is wonderful. So here are some numbers about our campaigns, and these are the total post, the total likes, total comment shares, reach for each series. And of course, we didn't have every sister submit something. So, but we got plenty. We wanted to try to post at least 1 or 2 a week. And we thought these were good numbers. The posts were popular. They got a lot of response. Of course, the Christmas memories reached almost 17,000, and the crosses was over 18,000. So that just shows you a little bit about that. And I wanted to just share before I quit that I wanted to show you what we're in the middle of doing right now. So this year's Advent and Christmas, we ask the sisters to send us their favorite holiday book or movie or recipe or decoration. So we've been sharing those, and they've been popular also. And this is our graphic that was done to go with the post. So I just want to show that to you. The people just really like to hear about the sisters, interest and things that are important to them. And I think that's it. So this is our Facebook and website if you want to look that up. And just wanted to thank CWR for the award and thank you all for listening. So that's it.
Thank you, Jennifer. Just a question, did you feel like the two different campaigns, the Christmas memories and the crosses, were they driving to each other, do you think?
Oh, you mean like one might have attracted more people to start?
Right. I don't think they.
Page or
right. Did each campaign help the other?
I think so. I think because of the number of shares, and then you start getting more people following you, and that creates more interest for the next series. So.
And I'm also wondering how your sisters responded to that. Are you like twisting arms to get people to contribute, or they're just like getting in line to share about their experiences there?
It depends on the sister. I just got a submission today from a sister, and she said, I love doing this. She loved sharing what she liked about Christmas. But then we have some who we don't, they don't submit anything. So it just depends.
All right, Leah wants to know how many people are on your staff.
Oh, let's see. Well, my supervisor also helps with social media. And then we have a development person, and we have a person who does partnerships, which is associates and alumni. There's 4 of us in mission advancement.
All right. Any other questions out there? Brian keeps popping up links in there for everyone who wants to follow those and have a look. All right. Thank you, Jennifer. It was a treat to see all that content. I appreciate it very much. I'm sure our colleagues do too. Oh, wait, there's one more message. Aha, I love this idea, says Michelle. Yeah, that's one of the great things. And that's why we named this session Excellence and Inspiration, because I'm getting inspired. So this is great. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to our next panelists. And we have a larger group here. We've got the Fab Five here with Sally Harper from the Congregational Leadership Team for the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet. And Kim Westerman is also the Communications Director for the Carondelets. Leah Wand, who's Communications Director for Collaborative Governance. And Belinda Davis, Director of Communications for the Daughters of Charity, and Caitlin Holdmeyer for the Communications Manager for the School Sisters of Notre Dame. They are representing the St. Louis Sisters and Sisters United News, who were recognized for outstanding integrated campaign for exploring intersections. So take it away. I think Sally is first.
Yes.
All right.
Good day to everyone.
Thank you.
We have all heard the parable of the mustard seed, how such a tiny seed grows into a very large bush where the birds of the air can make their nests. That would be a perfect description of how the adventure called Exploring Intersection, Catholic Sisters on Racism, Migration, and Climate began. In March of 2020, just before the COVID shutdown, there was a meeting of Region 10 of the LCWR in Dubuque, Iowa. This region includes Iowa, Nebraska, and Missouri. The presidential election was on the horizon, and during the meeting, some of us were lamenting that the words pro-life were heard as only applying to the issue of abortion, when there are so many areas that need to be included in our efforts to fulfill Jesus's promise. I came so that you might have life and have it more abundantly. Near the end of the meeting, 5 of us offered to form a committee to see how we could bring these pro-life issues to the fore. We are from the congregations of the Daughters of Charity, Franciscan Sisters of Mary, School Sisters of Notre Dame, Sisters of Charity of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet. We chose the emphasis that the LCWR was using, racial justice, inclusive migration, and care of creation, and added to those issues 9 more areas that would be considered pro-life, which we can see on the following slide. Gender equality, affordable housing, access to food, gun violence and gun safety, economic justice, anti-trafficking, immigration, migration, restorative justice, preservation of the family, discrimination, racism, ageism, sexism, access to safe, quality education, access to healthcare and insurance. And we narrowed that longer list down to 12 of those topics. Then we began to talk about how to get the message out before the elections. This is where one of us had the brilliant and, of course, obvious idea of asking our communicators who work with our congregations about how to proceed. That was the very best decision we made. The conversations began with these women, professional communicators, who brought the richness and understanding of their experience of working with women religious and who were not afraid to encourage us to think outside the box. They helped us to move from the time constraint of trying to do something before the 2020 elections to looking at a more long-range plan. They moved us from thinking of the written word to using social media, and they moved themselves beyond their normal geographic boundaries to develop a coordination between the St. Louis and Iowa communicators. The result of all this expertise, creativity, collaboration, generosity, and goodwill resulted in a 13-month series of panel discussions around these pro-life topics. Today is the 10th presentation. It has been a wonderful experience. On the part of the 5 original sisters, I would like to express our profound gratitude to the communicators who have made this project become a reality. This program would have been impossible without them. And now they will share about the nuts and bolts of this project.
Well, it really was one of those times when you're very thankful that your leadership comes to you at the beginning of when they're thinking about a project and really got us all involved very early on. So my name is Leah, and I'm one of the members of the steering committee. And the steering committee was comprised of the 5 LCWR Region 10 leadership team members that kind of came up with this idea, and then 6 communicators. So this steering committee served as a sounding board for the communicators as we have moved through this project. We go back to this committee, make sure we're still on task and still keeping their vision in the way that they have seen this project to be. Okay, next slide. We're not gonna lie, taking on a year-long project was a lot of work, but luckily we had a lot of women to divide up the work. 36 women comprise our village of communicators and women religious. Now, the majority of the work that's being done on the project, as Sally mentioned, is being done by CWR members that are in SUN and CLS, so Communicators for St. Louis Sisters and Sisters United News. We always try at conference to get together these 2 groups because we're in the same, leadership conference region. So this was just such a wonderful opportunity for us to come together and actually collaborate and, pull this project off with the expertise of everyone. Next slide. So to be able to take on a project like this, as we know, with our own congregational workloads, dividing up the work into task groups was key. We asked our communicators to sign up for a task group that spoke to their own strengths. So one of those times where you get to say, you know what, I really like technology, or I love the design section of our work. So that really helped keeping everybody involved since you picked the task group that spoke to you. So I worked on the host selection and support committee, and we knew that a great host was crucial to this project. We interviewed 3 wonderful women, but made the decision to go with Cherish Bazinski. Many of us had worked with Cherish or had her speak at a CWR conference. Her background in television journalism has been invaluable. Her ability to adapt on the fly has saved us in many cases. She also does a great job of interviewing each speaker ahead of time and coming up with the questions for each episode that my committee then helps tweak and order so that there's a good flow. So here is a message from our host, Cherish, about working on exploring intersections.
Hi, I'm Cherish, and I have the incredible privilege of hosting Exploring Intersections, Catholic Sisters on Racism, Migration, and Climate. It continues to be an awesome journey, and one for which I am profoundly grateful. We've all been through a lot over the past several years, and this program is unique in that we're unafraid to have the difficult conversations. Forget hot takes, memes, or tweets intended to burn. We get real about some of the biggest social issues of our time and how they intersect to create mass injustices. We explore the nuances. It's refreshing and enlightening and empowering, and I hope a salve for the social justice seeker's soul. But more than that, I believe we're providing a guidebook with these conversations that can help us all lead a values-based life. That's big. I want to thank the visionaries who conceptualized this series and all of the talented professionals who work behind the scenes to make this incredibly ambitious project a reality every month. All women, I might add. Thanks for caring about these complex issues. Thanks for letting me play a small role. And thank you for watching, listening, and sharing these conversations.
Hi, I'm Belinda Davis. I'm the Communications Director for the Daughters, and it was my pleasure, and it still is, to kind of chair and oversee the working group number 2, the group of folks who are the panelists or the speaker selection working group. And on that, there are 3 of the original sisters from the steering committee and 3 communicators, myself, Jeanette McDermott, and also Sister Beth Kress. These are photos of all of the women and 1 man who have so far served as panelists. We initially thought, as a steering committee, the goal would be to have a sister from one of the congregations within SUN or the CSLS group, so Region 10. Also a young person who is an expert, and also a person of color. Ideally, these would all be women. Of course, the sister would be a woman. And that has proved to be a bit of a challenge. We have had so far, if I've counted correctly, of these 31, 6 African-American expert women, 1 Latina woman, 11 young, and young is relative, younger than me, and we ended up with 1 gentleman who really was great. There have been 10 sisters, and today, this afternoon, we have a sister from outside of our Region 10, simply because that's who we were able to get as a sister. We've learned a lot. We've learned to work ahead, much ahead. We've also learned that if the person we're asking is not a sister and she isn't closely associated, affiliated with our congregations, we sometimes have some difficulties. We've had a few guesses that haven't turned out in the end. And sometimes it has more to do with the rehearsal time, the conversation time that's needed for Cherish to get to know the folks who are going to serve as panelists, as well as being there for, like this afternoon, the actual presentation or conversation. I think that going ahead, we're pretty well lined up. We have all of our speakers for January and for February, and we will have a baker's dozen, so 13 conversations. We will finish during Catholic Sisters Week in March. And that conversation we're hoping to have the actual steering committee sisters participate in. I think for me, the best blessing has really been getting to know all of the communicators, those 36 women. Next.
I'm Kim Westerman, and I was going to talk about 2 very closely related working groups. And the first of those is the Art and Website Committee. That was headed up by Angie Connolly. And they really were the keepers of our branding for the whole project. So to start off, they worked with Alan Johnson, who's a graphic designer who's worked with, I think, many of us and with CWR. So he created the logo, the branding guidelines. There's just a page from the whole packet of branding guidelines. And then from that, they built templates for the graphics that we use throughout the project. And then they built our website and they've maintained that in order to keep it consistent. And everything has just looked fantastic, I think. And they've also, as I said, created graphics each month like the one on the right here. And then they work closely with my working group, which was the promotion working group. So each month, the members of our group would create a topic overview. We would edit the speakers' bios so that they had a consistent format, and then we would create some sample social media posts. We made those into a promotions toolkit that was shared with all 36 of our folks so that we could use them in all of our various channels and promote across the board. And then the committee itself did promotion through our Exploring Intersections accounts. So we had created our own Facebook page for the project, and we post regularly there. We send out 2 e-newsletters a month. So we've built that list through the folks who registered for our sessions, and then it's always open if people want to sign up for the emails. And then we've also advertised through Global Sisters Report. So we've done 2 rounds of a digital ad campaign, and then we also every month use their free community news submissions to submit the event and promote it that way. So altogether, I think we've done a great job of working together. I think we've found a great system for having folks sign up to just do pieces of all these promotional channels so that it's not too overwhelming. But we've also found that there's a lot of dominoes that are all in a row. And as we wait for to get the speakers' photos, that holds up, that will then allow us to make the graphics, which will then allow us to put up on the website. And, if one thing gets delayed a little bit, it kind of has a domino effect. But overall, it's really worked very smoothly.
Thank you. My name is Caitlin. I work for the School Sisters of Notre Dame. I will be covering the technology and post-production challenges, goals, and some tips. But first, let's talk about some of the basic services we use to accomplish our overall goal to promote and share Exploring Intersections. First, we needed a website, Facebook group, a Zoom subscription, YouTube, and an email service. Then we needed a podcast service, which we used Buzzsprout. The technology team used Zoom and YouTube. They are one of the most important teams for production and post-production. Without their expertise and patience, we would not have had a final product. They made sure there was a practice session held with the whole panel a week before the live event, and then they managed the event. Some challenges they faced were behind the scenes, making sure the panelists showed up for practice and for the main event. It was difficult when a panelist was unable to show or a panelist had technical difficulties, which did happen a few times. And then when Exploring Intersections first started in March of this year, the technology group all had to have a crash course in Zoom to learn how to use the subscription and to host a live event. They also had to use YouTube for any spillover attendees unable to join Zoom when it actually hit its capacity. The most rewarding part for technology was a successful live event every second Wednesday of the month. Submitting the final recording to post-production finally gave them some breathing room as well, at least until the next rehearsal. So some tips would be to have the patience and to trust their last minute decision-making skills. Definitely relied on that. The post-production team supports one person who graciously agreed to take each episode and put it into a podcast. Through Buzzsprout, we were able to share Exploring Intersections on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. For each episode, a snippet from the conversation was created as an image using Buzzsprout, so we could promote the episode on Facebook and the website. The main challenge for post-production was finding the team to edit the episode, be ready to release a week later. Editing wasn't difficult. It was just finding the time to get that finished. A useful tip for post-production is to make sure to attend the live event and take notes on where to find the best sound bites to promote the episode. So by doing this, it made the editing process quicker and pulling the visual snippets easier. For the next slide, please. As you can see, these are our analytics. We have monthly average on Zoom and YouTube and podcasts. This graphic was actually pulled for the CWR conference, so it has increased drastically since that presentation that we gave, which is great. This graphic also shows engagement throughout our Zoom subscribers, our website lists, e-newsletter subscribers, YouTube, and Facebook. Each month, our analytics climbs a little more, and the analytics have shown that specific topics will gain more interest than others. So all this would not have been possible without the amazing team of communicators who came together to share their talents. Exploring Intersections has not only provided an educational platform for our audience, but has given our group of communicators the opportunity to learn from this experience, to collaborate with each other with such a big and dynamic group of people, and has created lasting friendships. And that is it.
I love that little outro there. Thanks for sharing that too. I mean, full disclosure, I am not a voting member of the awards or anything like that. And when I saw this campaign come out and knowing that it was happening for the whole year, I said, wow, that's an award right there. So it's really been an amazing project. And Barb Hecht has asked a question that I had the same question. What was your budget and how did each congregation contribute to that?
I'll try. Leah and Caitlin, please, sister, chime in. The way that we work as the communicators for St. Louis Sisters and Sisters United News is that we each pay, I'll call them a membership dues. So each participant from my office, there are 5 of us, we each, as one congregation, pay a dues. So that money is there. And we have used that money in the past for many different projects. I was an immigrant and you welcomed me as one that comes to mind for Sun. For St. Louis, we've had a library project and some other things, billboards, etc. This actual to-date amount that we have spent is close to $16,000. So that came from dues money that had already been set aside from both organizations. But, and in addition to, the sisters from Region 10 who were on the original steering committee were very adamant that if we went above or we needed extra, that would be coming from their treasury. Most of the money has been for what I would call the stipend or the monthly payment to our host, Cherish. However, there is Zoom there, which isn't a small little bit, and the graphic design work. So it seems large perhaps, but now that it's built, and this is kind of like going back to Memphis, it's takeoverable by anyone who might want to, put something else up there, vocation specific, specific social justice issue, peace and justice issue, and it wouldn't have to be monthly. That's kind of frightening, but maybe twice a year or maybe a 2-month campaign in 2022. So we are planning to keep it all live, meaning the Zoom stays up, Facebook stays up. Certainly the YouTube channel will remain. The podcast will still be accessible. So, keep that in mind as you're pondering this. It doesn't have to be overwhelming if you don't have 36 people.
That's actually my next question was, what is the future of it? I mean, you still have a few episodes to go, but what do you see yourself doing? It like another series, or it sounds like maybe a couple of them in 2022? How might this continue?
Oh, go ahead, Kim. You do it.
I was just going to say, yes, we do have a session today and then 2 more regular sessions in January and February, and then we'll have a March episode that kind of wraps everything up, navigating the road ahead. And then I think we're all taking a break. We don't have plans to continue the series ourselves. But like we said, we've created the brand. We'd be happy to pass it forward, or maybe we'll revive it at some point. But I think we'll have other projects in the future, but probably not with the same branding.
I think one of the things that we do plan on doing is if something happens in our media or something that happens, you know, in our world today, but it references an episode that we've already made, we will all promote or, you know, reference that, hey, you could go and watch this to learn more about the housing crisis. And so that's available for other communicators too. If there's something going on in your community and you want something that's one of our topics, feel free to share or use, since it is Catholic Sisters that are driving these topics, conversations.
Okay, any other questions out there for exploring intersections or any of our other panelists? We're getting close to the top of the hour.
This is just to add to what Lee and Kim said, that I know that we've heard that there are teachers that use this with their students. And so that's another way of getting it out. And they're there to be used. So.
Excellent. All right. Last call for questions as we near the top of the hour. Well, I have to say, I've frequently been amazed at the collaboration that it took to put this together. And as you're probably familiar with, anytime you're getting into creative work, you know, more cooks in the kitchen doesn't necessarily help, but it seems to really have worked well for you. And I would guess that your secret is those specialty groups, the task groups that you had. Would you like to comment on that at all?
I would just say absolutely. I think in the past we've done other big projects where it's kind of fallen to just a couple people, and this time sort of forcing everyone to pick a group without realizing they were committing to that for a year helps to divide up the work and just held everyone a little bit more accountable.
Okay. Here's a potential question. Have you leveraged receiving the award with local media or your communications efforts? So now you've already gotten the award. You could say the award-winning Exploring Intersections. All right. Well, thank you all to all of our panelists, 9 panelists today. What a group. So thank you for sharing your excellent work with us and taking the time to really show what you've done. It's really been impressive and inspirational. I certainly appreciate it, and my wheels are turning. I'm really pretty jealous about some of the work that you're doing and thinking, gosh, I need to step up my game here. So hopefully I'll be with you next year presenting something, but congratulations to everything that you've done. I do want to say also that we will have a survey that follows, as we often do, and the recording of this session will be on the CWR website. You probably saw a little slide at the beginning of our session today. Our next webinar is a little ways away. It's January 19th, and that's in collaboration with UISG, and we are building a communications office. We'll have a panel that talks about that. So remember to share about the new member initiative with your colleagues. And also use the Discord app to hop into that if you haven't had a chance yet. And until next time, I'm glad to be able to say this. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Bye, everybody.